Chapter 13, Project Planning. Here, we will discuss some tips for rehabbing rentals. These are tips and tricks that can save you time and money. First, you don't want to do the rehab the same way you would for a retail buyer. There's no reason to spend that kind of money on a property when you can probably get the appraisal you need while spending a whole lot less. In the previous chapter, we did a walkthrough inspection of a house, making notes on what repairs we'd like to make. We also established how we prioritize the repairs we're going to make. It's one thing to know what to do, it's another thing to do what you know. We're lifelong learners, and we work off a checklist to make sure things get done. Plans change, and we have to know how to go with the flow. The property walkthrough in the last chapter is how we take notes on what's needed to be repaired. It's easy to compartmentalize outside versus inside, or kitchen versus bathroom, bedroom, basement, etc. However, it's inefficient to work on one room at a time. Now you need to think of the project in phases of what needs to be done first so that other parts of the project can fall into place. Occupancy inspections. There are a couple examples of occupancy inspection forms from municipalities here in St. Louis. As mentioned in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, we want to begin with the end in mind. What is required for occupancy? These are things that must be done. It would be very difficult to learn the building code in its entirety. However, you can get a general sense of what your local area will require before your first project. You can try to address the big things first and leave a little extra in your budget to repair things that come up along the way or later. Pro tip: when you're doing your rehab, part of the process in Brrrr is getting an occupancy inspection. You need an occupancy inspection done after the rehab, but before you can rent. In St. Louis, it is required. The goal of occupancy inspections is safety. They don't want people to move into units that aren't fit for human habitation, especially fire safety. However, we feel the scope of the inspections has gone far beyond just the need for safety, but that is another subject entirely. One reason we believe is because inspectors are inspecting homes in their own neighborhoods. They are recommending fixes that may not even be necessary, but they're going to require it. The reason we're bringing up the occupancy inspection is because dealing with inspectors can sometimes be costly. They can delay the whole Brrrr process because you can't rent the property until it passes the occupancy inspection. So here's a tip when dealing with inspectors. Leave a couple of things for the inspector to find. Yes, I said it. Leave a couple things for the inspector to find. It's best if they're simple things, like not having batteries in your smoke detector. We recommend you leave some Easter eggs, so to speak of, that are left behind for them to find. Again, the job of the inspector is to make sure the property is fit and safe to live in. If they get there and they don't find anything, they're going to look harder for something. It's human nature. People want to feel that their job is justified. The goal is to keep them from looking too hard for anything wrong with your property. Big fixes can cost more money and add delays. Something like leaving batteries out of a smoke detector is great because it's an easy fix. Leave a couple batteries in your car. The point is, it makes it seem like you're solving problems together. Subconsciously, you're working together and you don't realize it. Therefore, you're building rapport. You're not creating an enemy, but in this case, a teammate. They're thinking, not only does this guy care about the property, but he's willing to make it right. And that inspector is not going to be as picky because he sees that you care about the neighborhood and he probably lives in the neighborhood. Project planning. It's important to know the scope and then the order of the project. you'll have to decide if you're going to be the general contractor, GC, yourself, or hire one. A GC is really just the project manager. They're the person that hires and manages all the subcontractors and helps make sure you're getting all the things permitted that need permits. We will discuss whether or not to hire a general contractor in the next chapter. If you're a project manager, you'll need to have a plan up front so you and your contractors can get working right away after you close on the property. If you're new to investing and want to jump straight into buying rental properties, we suggest you bring in somebody else who is an experienced investor, and he rehabs properties all the time. That could be another seasoned investor or a GC that does this for other investors. They'll walk in and notice things that you might not notice. They'll notice the less than obvious things, like whether an electric panel needs to be replaced or a plumbing stack has a crack in it. New investors might not notice these problems, but they can cost a lot of money to fix these things. So when you get a house under contract, it's best to invite a seasoned investor to help you make sure your numbers are correct. We personally believe that wholesaling is the best way to start investing. It is a great tool in your belt and helps you learn the process. It helps you learn your numbers. Workflow checklist. In the last chapter, we advised making a list of repairs you plan to make. Now is the time to take your walkthrough list and put it in order of how the project should flow. It's a pretty logical when you think about it. So first, get the property cleaned out. Anything you're going to remove, you want to rip that out first. If you're going to replace the cabinets or the vanity in the bathroom, take that stuff out first. Get it out of the way. Don't work around it. Make it simpler for everybody. And it's the same thing with the flooring. If the carpet is gross, just get it out. You're going to replace it anyway, and now you can see that you're working in what you're working with. Maybe there's hardwood underneath that you might be able to salvage. So rent a dumpster and make demo day or a weekend. This is going to make it 10 times easier now that you've got a blank canvas to work with and all the old out of the way. Number 2, if you are doing any electrical or plumbing work, do that next. This needs to be done before you start putting in walls or patching. If you wait on this, you might need to redo your walls in additional holes or made for the plumbing or electrical. And this is also a good time to replace windows, HVAC, and the roof. If those need to be replaced, a lot of the safety issues reflected in the occupancy permit will get addressed here too. Number 3, drywall repair, wall construction. Maybe we're adding another bedroom. So you want your painters and finish crew to come and patch all the holes and tape and mud the paint the whole house. It's easier to paint before putting in cabinets and light fixtures and having to paint around that stuff. Number 4, figure out your materials and take the necessary measurements to put together your plan. Go shopping and buy a bunch of materials. You should probably already have an idea of what you're going to buy from your prior walkthrough and notes, but double check now that the house is cleaned out. It's very common to find out you need things mid-project, but it's best to use forethought as best you can. Number 5, now is when we are going to put the kitchens and the bathrooms back together. We're usually going to be putting in new countertops and paint the cabinets, install new hardware on those cabinets. Number 6, then we install the new flooring. We do this towards the end of the project to make sure it won't get all scuffed up by our workers since everything else is finished. We do all the final touches last. Number 7, we touch up paint, we add the baseboards, we add the light fixtures, install the appliances, and maybe do some light landscaping. That's the basics of a rental property and the order of which things we want to do. Let's recap. Occupancy inspections. These are a priority. Without passing the occupancy inspection, we can't legally rent out the property. These fixes don't always make objective sense in our opinion. However, it's best to work as a team with them for the safety of your tenants, who again are really your clients. Number 2, project planning. If you're new to the rehabbing process, consult with other investors or contractors for help. It's easy to overlook expensive issues until you get some of your own experience. Number 3, workflow checklist. We walk through the house, going room by room to make notes on the necessary repairs. However, construction happens in phases, in a particular order throughout the house. Action item. In this chapter, you made a list of what repairs you would need to make on a property. Let's take that list and restructure it so it flows smoothly from one phase to the next. Workflow and usability are not afterthoughts. They impact the core of any project and dictate how it should be engineered. Ryan Holmes.